Hostages who were held captive at the gas plant in Algeria have told of their relief and joy at getting out alive. But tonight, the US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has warned it's still an extremely difficult and dangerous situation, with reports an American has been killed. The details are still unclear about exactly how many people remain caught in the attack. The latest reports claim the whereabouts of around 30 foreign workers are still unknown. We'll have the latest from our political editor Adam Bolton in a moment. First, Sky's Jason Farrell has tonight's main report.
The relief of freedom. Their captivity has come to a dramatic end, and among those escaping this appalling ordeal are Brits, thankful they can now go home.
Very relieved to be out.
Yes.
Obviously. We still don't know really what's happening back on site, so as much as we're glad to be out, our thoughts are with colleagues that are still there at the moment.
I won't feel 100% happy until I'm back with you again. And so I say I'm happy, and I'll be happy, but my heart goes out to the guys that are still there, and hopefully everyone comes home safe.
The freed hostages may well be conscious that they're on an Algerian bus being interviewed by Algerian state TV when asked about the performance of the Algerian army.
How do you think about the operation of the army Algerian to save you?
I think they did a fantastic job. I was very impressed with the Algerian army. Very exciting episode. I feel sorry for anybody who's been hurt.
I thought the army and the gendarmes did a fantastic job. Kept it so nice and safe.
This Algerian worker says he was in a room with 260 people when the army started firing. He says they hit the terrorists while he and other hostages escaped through a back door. Those being treated by medical teams were also asked about the rescue operation.
What do you think from Algerian army?
They are a bit noisy. They are a bit noisy. And, we just heard we were in our rooms, so we just heard what's happening. But they saved us.
I don't remember. It happened.
Anything?
It happened so fast.
So fast.
Those rescued seem thankful, but it's feared many were also killed, others still held, and Algeria's decision to storm the complex is a moot point. David Cameron told MPs he'd asked to be warned of any operation, but wasn't.
Mr. Speaker, we were not informed of this in advance. I was told by the Algerian Prime Minister while it was taking place. He said that the terrorists had tried to flee, that they judged there to be an immediate threat to the lives of the hostages and had felt obliged to respond.
Hostages of at least 10 different nationalities were caught up in this. Japan's government is said to be furious it wasn't told about the operation. Foreign kidnappings are common in this region, but this large-scale attack heralds a more ambitious terrorist presence, and governments now have to calculate how they'll respond to it.
This is an extremely difficult and dangerous situation. No one knows better than Algeria how ruthless these groups are. After all, they fought a very terrible war against them for a number of years with great loss of life.
Stories have emerged, including that of a Frenchman who spent 2 days hiding under his bed, and Brits apparently hiding in a space above the ceiling. But mixed with relief is sadness for those killed and fears for dozens of foreign workers still unaccounted for. Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Well, details about the hostage situation changing from hour to hour since the crisis first broke. But what do we know about what's happened so far? Sky's Foreign Affairs editor Tim Marshall now with the details.
The attackers targeted the gas plant in a remote part of eastern Algeria called In Amenas. The militants first attacked 2 buses carrying foreigners leaving the complex for the airport in the early hours of Wednesday morning. The group then broke through the gates of the compound and took hostages as they overran part of the living quarters. It seems they then took some of their hostages to the gas plant itself further north. Algerian troops, backed by helicopters, rushed to the complex and surrounded it. On Thursday, it appears that some of the militants tried to escape with hostages in a convoy of trucks that was attacked by the Algerian forces. A number of hostages, including Stephen McFall from Belfast, managed to escape from the convoy as it came under fire. Around that time, troops moved into the compound and began a long battle. We think the living quarters have been cleared, but a standoff at the gas plant may still be ongoing.
And yet another update with the latest news from the AP news agency. An American worker at the complex has been found dead. AP reporting US officials that he's been named as Frederick Butaccio, a Texas resident, but unclear so far how he died. The US officials saying they recovered his remains and notified his family, and he's said to come from the Houston suburb of Katy in Texas. But no official confirmation of those details as yet. We'll, of course, update you as we get more. Let's talk now to our political editor, Adam Baldwin, in Downing Street. And Adam, that news typical of the way that this news has sort of drip-fed out and making it very difficult for all these governments to make a correct intelligence assessment.
Mark, that's absolutely right. Even although this gas works is shared between BP and the Norwegian Statoil company, it is on sovereign Algerian territory. The Algerians are in charge of this operation, and the government, British government, is dependent on what it learns from the Algerian government as to what's been going on, and that's something which clearly is frustrating for them, as is the fact that bringing about a resolution to this situation will also depend on the Algerians. What we know is that of more than 600 hostages originally taken, well over 500 have now been freed, but we also know that since this crisis began, a Briton, a French person and now an American are confirmed as being killed, and there's still between 30 and 50 foreign nationals who appear to be still caught up in a hostage situation. So that the real question now, as the government crisis team of Cobra meets over the weekend, is what's going to happen to those hostages. How many of them are British? It's thought that perhaps up to 20 or so could be British, and how many of them may already have been casualties of the fighting so far, and of course above all, how is this standoff going to be resolved?
Adam, thanks very much indeed. More on the crisis coming up very shortly.
At that moment was that I was sitting in the middle of a huge and very valuable target.
We hear from a man who was held hostage by the mastermind behind the gas plant attack. A special report by our Middle East correspondent Sam Kiley coming up in just under 15 minutes' time. And we'll be looking at the latest reaction to the crisis in tomorrow's papers, with a first look at editions of our press preview at 10:30. But to our other main news tonight,